Daniel at the Siege of Boston, Chapter 2. Freedom is the prize. Old South was full to swarming. All of Boston seemed to be in attendance. A wave of scarlet filled the front pews, and some British officers even sat on the steps leading to the pulpit. Colonel Stockdale was in the first pew on the aisle. Would he find another way to start a riot and arrest our own town leaders in the confusion? Samuel Adams, in a coat nearly as threadbare as Master Richardson's, greeted the British with all politeness. He must have known the officers were ready to arrest him as soon as they got the signal. The signal Master Richardson had so bravely destroyed when I could not. Dr. Benjamin, Church, and other town leaders occupied the deacon's seats, along with John Hancock, who had silk and ruffles enough to satisfy even Josiah Henshaw. I did not look for my father. Master Richardson sat next to me and nodded more than once. No doubt he was letting our friends know that we had succeeded in our mission. By the time Dr. Warren arrived, the meeting house was so packed that it took him a good while to reach the pulpit. Like the Roman orators of old, he wore a toga over his clothing. "I mourn my bleeding country," he said soon after he began speaking. "With them I weep at her distress, and with them deeply resent the many injuries she has received from the hands of cruel and unreasonable men." He spoke with dignity, and his language was careful to avoid treason. It warmed my heart to hear him speak of the greatness of our town and of our cause. Many nodded, including Father. The British stirred, but did not rise. Dr. Warren continued as if they were not there. He spoke of the men who had settled our country, who bravely threw themselves upon the bosom of the ocean, determined to find a place in which they might enjoy their freedom. But then our freedom was taken from us in the form of unfair taxes. We were required to import goods from England and then tax for the privilege. It was unjust. Father said so, and I agreed. The British were forced to repeal most of their taxes after our protests. Their tea tax remained, and the Sons of Liberty would not stand for it. Now, as Dr. Warren said, our streets are again filled with armed men. Our harbor is crowded with ships of war. But these cannot intimidate us. He was right, and that made me proud. Boston stood firm. A British captain on the pulpit stairs held up a handful of bullets, a warning that muskets were deadlier than words. Dr. Warren dropped a white handkerchief over the captain's hand and continued his address. "Our liberty must be preserved. It is far dearer than life. We must defend it from the attacks of friends as well as enemies. We cannot suffer even Britons to steal it from us." Samuel Adams nodded vigorously. Some said his ideas were so radical that they would lead to complete independence from England. But I could not imagine such a thing. Surely the king would come to his senses. Father believed he would, that our rights as free Englishmen would be restored. Massachusetts cannot stand for a government that rules with an iron fist, and it gives its citizens no freedom, no voice, Father often said. But the king isn't a tyrant. He will restore our rights when he hears our case. Others believed that we would be forced to go to war to win back our liberty and break from England completely. It was as if Dr. Warren heard my thoughts. "An independence from Great Britain is not our aim. No, our wish is that Britain and the colonies may, like the oak and the ivy, grow and increase in strength together." I breathed a sigh of relief. I feared what war would bring. Would Father have to fight? Would I? If this morning's test was any measure, I'd be a failure as a soldier. I didn't know which scared me more, war or tyranny. Dr. Warren stood on the side of freedom. War might come. He knew, and he trusted the people of Boston to fight, however difficult the combat. He said near the end of his speech, "You will never decline it when freedom is the prize." Colonel Stockdale's forehead creased in a devilish frown. No doubt he was looking for the missing ensign and wondering why the egg had not flown through the air. When the doctor finished, Samuel Adams took the pulpit and thanked him for his spirit and elegant oration. He was not one to let the day end without an insult to the Redcoats. He called on the town to make plans for the next year's commemoration of the bloody massacre. Some of the Redcoats began to hiss. Shouts of "Fie! Fie!" were heard, which were misunderstood and became cries of "Fire!" All was panic and confusion. People in the upstairs gallery climbed out of windows and down gutters, sure they were about to be burned alive. I was thrust this way and that in the frenzied rush for the door. I lost Master Richardson. Josiah pushed past me, his wig askew. Somebody knocked into me, and I fell to my knees. Twice I tried to get up. only to be struck down again by the rush of bodies. I buried my head in my hands and screamed, sure that I'd be trampled to death. Suddenly, there were hands on my shoulders, and someone pulled me to my feet. "There you go, lad," the man said, patting my shoulder with a chuckle. I grabbed the edge of a pew and fought to catch my breath. The crowd had thinned. Father stood near the doors, anxiously scanning the room. "Good work, son," he said as I passed by him in the flow of people rushing for the street. "Hurry home now." On my walk, I turned Dr. Warren's words over and over in my mind. "However difficult the combat, you will never decline it when freedom is the prize." His sentiments stirred me, but I knew I did not deserve my father's praise. He believed I was the one who stopped the ensign. He thought I had been calm in the panic. I wanted Massachusetts to have her freedoms back, like my father. But I'd declined the combat. I'd been a coward. Would I ever be worthy of the prize?